Okay, so today I'll just be talking about some general stuff which probably wouldn't be too useful um, in terms of the project, but it's pretty good to keep in mind because most software projects actually fail. I think most of them end in litigation where they just get sued. So it's not really like a rosy sort of world out there for software development. I think the statistic is like only 30% of them even like pass. So I think it's really important to understand what's going on and why they fail. In terms of the actual project, Ignite Mentoring, I think for now we'll just see what we need and then we'll, I'll just let you guys do whatever you guys think is necessary. I'll still provide some guidelines because I feel most of the time you'd be scratching your head as to what you need to do. So let's get started. Um, but before we go into actual content, I guess I should give a little background about myself. Um, I'm basically just a programmer, and I've been programming for quite a while now. Maybe ever since high school. So it's been quite the journey. In terms of the actual programming I've done, I've worked in various companies. Um, and most of the software you see for Coders for Causes, I've basically built from the ground up. And my preferred tech stack right now is probably Vue. Um, it's Vue and Laravel right now. Laravel for the back end. It gets a lot of hate because it's PHP. Um, but it's actually really popular right now in the industry, Laravel, because it's just so fully featured and you can build things so quickly um, and efficiently because it's bug free as well. Because there's just so much already built in. It's sort of this idea that Ruby on Rails popularized, that convention over configuration sort of thing, where you just adhere to their sort of ways of doing things and then you build apps faster. Um, that really works well for when you're like a lone developer and you have to build things from scratch. I think really helps me, especially for hackathons and stuff like that. Um, on the other side, you have something like bare bones, like Express that people like as well. I really don't like that personally because it's just too much stuff that I have to think about and plug in, and I'm not like a guy with 10, 20 years of industry experience who has kids and stuff. And who's like contributed to React and Vue and all that, and built my own framework. I just don't have that experience, so I don't really think I could use Express in a real production environment where things like you get hacked every day. It's just too dangerous and too many bugs, and development is too slow. Um, so let's move on to the actual content I want to cover. Um, so the number one advice or the key takeaway, if you guys just tune out of everything, is just stick with it. I think that's the number one thing. People just this is more tailored for university students, by the way, because university you get a lot of freedom to do whatever you want, and it's harder to sort of sit down and work on something. And it not going to lie, it gets boring if you're working on something for months, right? The same thing for months, it's boring, right? So you just have to be consistent, right? And set a number of hours that you want to do, and I guess it works really well for learning, and it's worked well for me. That's another way to guarantee to get HDs is to just be consistent. Uh, just do the material consistently. So set aside like 5, 10 hours every week to do it. Because if you miss a week, it's a lot harder to catch up because you forget stuff very easily. But if you do it consistently, it solidifies the material much better. Um, so that's the number one takeaway, I guess. Obviously, it's just my opinion on things, but just stick with it, and I guarantee that you'll get a lot out of it, and you'll learn a lot. So these are the common reasons why projects fail, in my opinion, and I feel like probably you guys would agree as well. But probably not the ordering. I think maybe you guys would place poor teamwork higher. But this is just what I think. So lack of discipline, um, which ties into sort of the previous slide of this, sticking with it. It's just hard to sort of work on a project consistently. People like to take time off and all that, and it gets a lot harder to get back into it. Second, overconfidence and overestimating your abilities. This is really prone in software for some reason, especially in experienced devs or amateur devs. They really think that they know more than they actually do. That's for one thing. I think for amateur devs, they think they know more than they actually do. Um, and for experienced devs, they just think that they can do more than they actually can. So they'll think something would take 1 week, but it would take them months because bugs and unexpected changes would slow them down. Poor teamwork. I think we can all agree, like our projects, we tend to work in our own little silos and not really collaboratively. And you really don't sort of benefit from the collaboration that working in a team offers. So hopefully I can offer some tips in software to sort of utilize this. And lastly, bad organization. I think this is the easiest to fix as well. And it ties in with discipline again. I think if any of you guys done that prof comp, it's kind of a story of just poor organization, just not knowing when things are due, like setting a schedule for having meetings and all that. It becomes a gigantic mess. Um, so how do we overcome lack of discipline? The most obvious way is just to kind of emulate a work environment where you set defined times and days you have to come in. Um, I think it will be hard at the time, but it will be rewarding and you'll enjoy it when you look back on it, like at the end of the day. For example, if you guys been to the gym, it's really hard to sort of force yourself to just do it. But when you actually do, you feel much better about yourself after the workout, right? And I'd like you guys to come in at least 1 day a week because I'd like to keep in touch with what you guys are doing and help you guys when needed. So, how do we overcome overconfidence and overestimating? And this is a little bit technical and um, that you probably wouldn't use in the project, but just keep in your mind, keep it in the back of your mind for this. And I'm sure when you start working, you're gonna use a similar approach, especially in a more modern company. So take an iterative approach, build a simple product, and continually improve on that product. Client communication is key. At the very least, the client should be presented with the product at the end of each iteration. So that's a mouthful, but basically, you should build something that's working but very simple and continually improve on that. So, for example, our case, we're trying to allocate mentors. The most simple product that we could sort of show to the client would be a simple text um, reading application that takes in the input and spits out the output in um, some unstructured format, just printed out or something with the finished allocations. And when the client approves of that sort of thing, you continually improve on it. So maybe you make it look better. You could persist the data, store in a database, and that really helps with being overconfident or overestimating abilities because you really get a true sense of how difficult the application is by building it from start to finish rather than building it from um, in blocks trying to build out the entire application in one go. Basically, it's a I think this is really good, and I'm pretty sure most companies should or will um, adopt this approach. So teamwork. Um, I think meeting face to face helps a lot with this instead of that sort of asynchronous chat where you would post a message, wait a few hours to respond. Pair programming is another big fan of. I'm a big fan of pair programming, and that's basically two people just or more. It could be more, just sitting down and programming the same thing, or one person looks over their shoulder while they're programming. It actually catches so many bugs and so many errors. I really like it. And lastly, GitHub and Git uh, and the GitHub issues. This really helps with collaboration instead of using something like uh, Google Docs or Dropbox. Um, it's a lot more organized. Hopefully, you guys can get in the habit of using this because you're gonna have to use something similar while you're working. So, for organization, again, use Git and GitHub to organize your code. I'm not gonna dive into how it actually works because it's quite detailed, but I think you'll get the hang of it very quickly when you start using it. And GitHub issues for feature and bug tracking. I think feature might be a bit difficult to do, but I think bug tracking would be really helpful. Like when you find a bug, but obviously you can't fix the bug straight away. It's very good to document it somewhere so you can fix it later on. Generally they use Slack in real life, or Teams is very big. Perf is actually very big on Microsoft .NET. Um, just traditionally the enterprise product, so um, that's how it is. And just make sure to conduct admin tasks periodically. And it really shouldn't take that long as well. It should at max take an hour a week to do admin tasks. Keeping track of things shouldn't be anything like ProfCon where it took up like 50% of our time, which was kind of retarded. Um, so it should be quick, but we just have to have the discipline to do it consistently. So I'll just quickly show you GitHub issues because it's really a powerful tool that we can use. Um, I guess I'll do it with something existing of mine. So if I can uh, open up, is this something I can use? No. Um, let's look at one of my repos and I'll create a new issue. Actually, I could do it on an open source project, but I feel like that's a bit troll because actually I think I have a good one to do, um, which was it was previously a hack if I can remember what it was, event stream I think it was. So recently, someone who was malicious. Oh, that's read only now, so that's unfortunate. I don't think I can create a new issue, but um, I think I can make it on the questionable repo, which is Flatmat stream. So basically, the story is that this very popular library was infected by some malicious code by um, importing this package here. Did GitHub remove it as well? No. Okay, yeah, GitHub removed it as well. That's that's too bad. Um, I'll just do it on this issue then. Some random issue. You probably shouldn't do this, but who cares? So the background was that Flatmat Stream, which was a malicious library, contained some malicious code that was obfuscated and was imported into Event Stream. And Event Stream is used by a lot of popular software. And so basically, anyone using that popular software, I think like a popular Bitcoin wallet was vulnerable, and it just stole people's Bitcoin. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I'm happy to discuss more. I'll do a little write up on our Facebook page for that as well. So you just hit this big green button, new issue, and let's pretend the scenario is we're trying to, well, we found a bug, maybe uh, the off by one error. Um, just a quick title, and you can leave a comment, and you can actually add some inline code. So um, just do a map function, and you can do some cool inline code here. So I'm typing off one hand because I had a blood test, so can't use two hands. So and y plus one. Um, so it's this. It's a little cryptic, but that's how it is in JavaScript ES6. So this is how you create the issue and a bunch of other stuff, but that's basically it. So it's super simple. It's kind of like just a to-do list or something. Um, you submit the issue, and you have some helpful things here to organize your project. I think this is super. Probably should have done it in my own repo here, but basically you can assign people in this left column. If you have access to the repo, I actually don't. Probably shouldn't have done that. But you can assign people, and that helps to keep track of who's tasked to do what. You can have some labels for organizations. These projects and milestones are more to do with GitHub projects, and you can look into more of it if you want to start using it. It's kind of like Trello on GitHub, but with better integration with GitHub, basically. And when it's done, you can just close it, like fix this bug, and then close. And that basically shows that you've completed this sort of bug or fixed it. And of course, a lot of the times, you'll find that you didn't actually fix it, so you can just reopen it again. Um, and that has this cool timeline of what's going on. So we'll just close this for now because this isn't our repo. We can't actually delete issues, I don't think, so it'll stay there forever. Um, so let's get back to the talk. So that was basically a quick intro to GitHub issues. Uh, so now you guys probably need to make some of these decisions that are really important but really hard as well. And it's also a challenge because if you change any of this sort of stuff later on, it's a huge cost. Most of the time, it ends up having to rewrite the whole code base, so it's not an easy decision. But basically, define what the ultimate goal of the project is. I think it's pretty well defined in our case, but a lot of the time in real life, people just don't even know what they want. It's hard to define this as well. Decide on the tech stack, and by that I mean like what sort of software or frameworks or libraries you want to use. You cannot use anything and just program in pure HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. Personally, I'm a big fan of that sort of stuff because I'll go into it later on, but it's good for you. And the app architecture, and I think this is a little bit more advanced, how it looks on a really high level. So where the database lies, which region, as a front end only, that sort of stuff, which may not be too applicable. So I think this is sort of a big one here where you don't really know how to assign work a lot of the time, especially in software projects that are new. So the normal way is to break it up into independent parts where you don't really depend on another person completing it. So you're not sort of bottlenecked by them. And you can, it's kind of like a puzzle, right? You build the puzzle in one part and then you can join it together later on. The most natural way is the front end back end sort of split. Um, but a lot of the times it's still not that simple. So I would recommend um, to just it's okay to have some redundancy and have multiple people work on the same thing, like pair programming, like I suggested before as well. It really helps to get that teamwork going. But basically, yeah, just assign work that's sort of independent of each other. Um, so, how to get the required skills? So, my recommended approach is to just glance over basic documentation, um, and then do some practical things. And you spend most of your time doing practical things. The reason why you need to sort of get some basic knowledge is because a lot of things will be foreign to you, and it just doesn't really, well, not really enjoyable when things don't really make sense. So an example would be to read about basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then this should only take a day or two. And spend the rest of your time watching YouTube videos about building web applications, and that's basically it. And obviously, you should, instead of just watch, you build along. So that's what I found to be the most practical, but it's not necessarily the best approach because if you just did this, you're not going to get into Google. You really need to spend more time on that sort of reading up on the basics, the stuff, instead of doing a lot of practical stuff because, like frameworks and stuff, because frameworks change quite a lot. Just a few years ago, like 5 years ago, jQuery was literally an entire web, and then just a few years later, now we have Angular, and then suddenly Angular shifts to React. Whoops. Um, and then who knows what's next after React, like in a year or two. So it's very crazy how fast things change, but the fundamentals never change, and that's why they're so highly valued as well. Um, so just in closing, um, this is the stuff I would like to get done probably relatively soon. Figure out what times you want to work and what days. Decide on the tech stack. Do you want to make it just in vanilla stuff, or do you want to go fancy with some frameworks? I can help you guys decide on that as well. Uh, and then work out, and it's probably the most important thing is to work out the algorithm, actually implement it. Um, and I've given you all the fields with that CSV document, so hopefully that is enough. And then have a client meeting, um, and hopefully we can have many of those, either face to face or through the phone, because I think communication is the key to any successful project. So that's basically it, and I hope to see you guys soon.